And now it's time for Mob Talk Radio with your host, Jeff Canarsie. And this is Mob Talk Radio Breaking News.
Yo, Lord willing, Jeff Canarsie, Mob Talk Radio. Check it out. Yo, we stay quiet like Russell Buffalino when things will get ugly like Pepsi's death in Casino. Who do we know? No one, nobody. But we're all well respected like Delacroix and Gotti. I know wild nights, Havana nocturne. Light up a cigar and watch your spot burn. You'll get patty whacked, I'm tough like Irish dock workers. Rubber guys with guys, hooligans and block lurkers. Corner berserkers, street savvy soldiers. You owe, you better pay. Don't make me say I told you. Code you don't betray, I say what I mean. Providence and Brooklyn all the way to the bean. I'd rather be unseen, like Vinny the Chin. I don't gotta go to Vegas to see cities of sin. Pull the pin, drop bombs like Danny Green. I write homicide like the murder machine. Lansky Luciano, mastermind.
And a bit of breaking news. I am Jeff Canarsie, your host of Mob Talk Radio, and a bit of breaking news this evening as we're finding out around 9 o'clock this evening. Alleged boss of the Gambino Crime Family, Francesco Frank Cali, was whacked outside of his house in Todt Hill up in Staten Island. According to the reports, he was shot 6 times in his chest and then was run over by a blue truck, so to speak. Frank Cali died en route to the hospital. And this is big news, and big news for a lot of reasons. First of all, I've said it a million times, we haven't really had mob hits here in New York in a long time. This is going to be very reminiscent of 1986 outside of Sparks Steakhouse when Paul Castellano got whacked by John Gotti, Sammy the Bull Gravano, and a bunch of other people in a coup to take over bid of the Gambino crime family. Now, what makes this even more interesting is the fact that Frank Cali was very well respected on the streets, very much a crime figure that was not seen very often. I have seen him a couple of times, but that being said, I didn't know Frank Cali at all. But the one thing that I will say which makes this incredibly interesting is the fact that this was done in Staten Island outside of his house. It's a very brazen mob hit, and of course the pundits already are on the mark by asking a lot of questions as far as how in the world this can happen, and it can happen very easily. It doesn't necessarily have to be a sanctioned hit. This could be a personal issue with somebody else, but usually, let's break down the odds here. Getting shot 6 times at point blank range is definitely not an accident. This is a mob hit. It has all the earmarks of a mob hit, and I think that's exactly what it is. And so I think the question that people are going to start asking at this point is, and if you don't know a lot about Frank Cali to begin with, you can look him up on your own. I'm not going to do a whole dissertation on who Frank Cali is. Obviously, in the coming days, I will. But what makes this a little auspicious to me, anyway, is the fact that Frank Cali was able to kind of bring in a lot of Sicilian guys. He really, from the early days, was the drug guy, the guy who was able to bridge the gap with Sicilian factions in Italy. For narcotics trade, very well respected in the streets, not the kind of guy you're going to see standing on the street corner having conversations with anybody, very low-key guy. And so it makes me wonder, just with everything that I do for a living and everything that I can think about, why would you hit Frank Cali like this? And it screams echoes of the 1980s to me. Like I said, I can't be 100% certain of exactly what happened, and I'm sure in the next few days we are going to find out more. But I think this is probably not an outside job. This is probably an inside job, mainly because of Frank Cali's status in the street. I really don't think anybody would have the balls to do that. This is just the latest string in things that we've seen from the mob in New York City. Obviously, we had the Sal Zatola stuff that went on. But this is big. This is very big for a lot of reasons. Frank Cali was a young guy. By multiple sources that I've talked to have all said to me that he was a good guy, a respected guy, really bridged the gap between a lot of people, and had taken the Gambino crime family and sort of brought them back to a time period back in the 60s and 50s under the likes of Carlo Gambino. And so this is what we're seeing now. Frank Cali is dead. I don't know what this is going to mean for the Gambino crime family, but I can guarantee you one of a couple of things. The first thing is that if this was an inside hit, chances are this could be an internal family issue with the Gambino crime family. That's the first option. The second option would be is that this was something that was universally accepted and agreed upon with the heads of the 5 families that he had to go. But this sort of comes out of left field, and normally there's a general pulse on the street as far as there's problems. To my knowledge, and to a lot of other people who I've talked to in the last 3.5 hours, there weren't problems on the streets. The Gambinos were running like a well-oiled machine. Frank Cali was very well liked, at least from outside appearances. That's what makes this a little strange. I don't think that this is going to be one of your run-of-the-mill gangbanger just decides to shoot somebody kind of thing. This is a mob hit. It's got every echo of being a mob hit. Now, if you're not from New York, never been to Todt Hill, let me explain something to you. There's not a straight shot out of that place. All the roads, it's high on a bluff, and all of the roads are winding and sort of circle back together. So this is something that if you're going to hit a guy outside of his house up in that area, you have to have a well laid out plan to get the fuck out of the area because the streets are winding. It's not just a straight shot. It's go down this hill, then go down that hill, then take a right and get the fuck out. There's one way in, one way the fuck out. And obviously with him being shot 6 times and then run the fuck over, obviously somebody panicked. You can just kind of sort of gather that because you just don't run a guy over. I mean, that's straight up make sure he's dead kind of stuff. It screams that somebody was in a rush to get out of there. That's a highly surveilled area to begin with because it's a multi-million-dollar area, millions and millions of dollars. Paul Castellano used to live there as well. So the fact that this hit comes outside of his house, too, is another strange thing. I would think that if you're going to do a mob hit on a big, high-profile guy, you're just going to hit him and then bury him somewhere. That's typically how things function. But for some reason, he was pretty much shot right outside of his house, which is fucking insane. I don't understand that part of it, but I think that what we are starting to see, and I could be wrong, and I've said this for a while, is that there wasn't a moratorium on no killing in the mafia. Obviously, that moratorium is thrown right off the table at this point. And I also said, too, and I've said it multiple times, that the mob, once they stopped using murder to solve problems, they lost a lot of the fear that they had. Obviously, now I'm sitting here reading and looking at all of this garbage on TV saying, uh-oh, here we go. So this could be an internal issue between Frank Cali and some other people. This could be a family issue. This could be an outside the family issue. You never really know. It's been alleged that Frank Cali was a narcotics trafficker, had really honed in on oxycodone and some of the opiates and stuff that are being sold on the streets. I don't know how really honest to God true that is. That's just what the FBI has alleged for years. But what's going to make this interesting now is to see who steps up. I don't think we're going to see a John Gotti type of moment where all of a sudden here comes the new prince out the door putting the crown on himself. I don't think we're exactly going to see that. And I'm sure that for something like this to be sanctioned or to go down in the fashion that it has, obviously something was fucking wrong. And we're probably, I apologize for you hearing about my buzzing, but everybody and their mother is calling me and texting me at this point. So, all that being said, Frank Cali was whacked outside of his home tonight at 9 p.m., was alleged boss of the Gambino crime family, really was well known for bridging the gap with the Sicilian factions, and bringing in guys from Sicily and insulating himself incredibly well. Like I said, as we move on for the next few days, I'm sure there's going to be more to talk about and more to discuss. But per the usual, you can follow us on Twitter at RealMobTalk7, and we'll be talking about this one for a while. This is as big as the Castellano hit. Frank Cali was a Gambino boss. This is the second boss to be murdered in several decades in a brazen hit outside of his home. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I don't see there being a way that this was not unsanctioned at some point. Now, if this is a fringe group that is upset within the Gambino crime family, then this is just going to be the beginning of the bloodshed, because I don't think anybody in their right mind is going to take this sitting down if it wasn't sanctioned at least, but we'll see. You never know with this stuff, and it's just crazy. Anyway, Frank Cali has been killed.